Okay, I've designed a solution for the roof structure, or some way to prevent the water from causing problems with this parapet wall chimney structure. Offhand, when I first looked at it, I could tell this big monolith was meant to have its importance and prominence on its own. So going in, I was not inclined to add any more to that top than I needed to add, and I wanted to keep that as minimal as possible. And there are other ways to do this to make it even more minimal than what I've shown. But I'm showing the first solution that is fairly straightforward and economical. So I didn't want to add really wide members or trim or any kind of thing up here wider than it needed to be to detract from that stone at all. And this was the simple solution that I came up with. It consists of a roof structure built inside that inside that upper room, without bearing on any of those stone walls, cantilevered out over those stone walls and dropped down in front of them enough that the water can't possibly end up inside, as long as the wall is kept tuck pointed. And what this consists of, at the first level, at the lower level, all that needs to happen is a 30 by 22 access opening needs added up in there. You don't have to have a fixed ladder, it's not part of the requirement, but you will have to have an access opening. And when you frame that, you're going to have to double up. Two members are on the side. I'm not sure how those members are interfaced with these bearing walls here. I'm assuming they are let into it on this end anyway, and possibly on this end they are just let into the first 4 inches. I'm assuming that this is 8-inch CMU down here, and that we know this is 4-inch at the other locations. Up on the top level, what a person would do is remove all the roof covering, and if there's sloped framing, to me it looked flat, but if there's sloped framing, that should be removed to get a flat substrate, a flat platform up there down inside those parapet walls. The existing scupper would stay in place and be screened so small animals couldn't get in there, and that provide ventilation for the air gap that I'm showing maintained around some walls that we would build on that platform inside. We build 2x4 walls with 1/2 inch or 7/16 OSB on the interior. So there's your limestone on the outside, 1.5 inch air gap, and then these framed walls built inside. I would say screw that OSB on so that a person, if they had to access the inside of these walls at some point for any reason, they shouldn't have to. If those are checked for tuck pointing prior to erection of these walls, then they probably will never have to be accessed anyway, and you probably could just nail this OSB on. But I was showing it screwed with 1.5 inch or so gap between it and the limestone. And then the structure itself, there's the 2x4 walls, the short 2x4 walls, and they are built a couple inches below the top of the existing limestone walls, and then 2x6 roof rafters, flat, level, no pitch, are built over those and notched out over the stone walls. And then an aluminum clad 2x6 is added to the end of those as the overframe, with drip edge and a flat rubber membrane roof over the top of that structure. These are just blocking between those where they begin to cantilever out, since their overframe doesn't occur until out here. The chimney, the only concern with that, it does not have to come up above this roof any more than the boot and the head requires, because the code requirement is that that outlet is at least 5 feet above the vent hood for any of the appliances you're venting, which are at least 5 or 6 feet below this ceiling to start with. Also in that first floor, I have you adding 5/8 drywall down here. This is not labeled yet, but I have you putting 5/8 drywall over that existing framing. And then if you wanted to, and I didn't see, there's not a lot of places for water to drip. Most of the water will be dripping right on existing roofs, except at that front right corner, that northeast corner. Some of that would drip down to the ground. So if a person wanted to build this and then add the aluminum gutter around it with an outlet at the back side down to that cricket, that could be done as well if they wanted no water at all dripping off of that. Otherwise, I don't think a flat roof without the gutter would be a problem. And this is what it would look like. This is about a 5-inch, or this is the 2x6, and then 2 layers, a 1/2-inch fiberboard and a 1/2-inch plywood, and the EDPM on top, with a look something like this from the ground, and then that's adding that gutter. I don't think the gutter is required, or it's not required, and I don't think it's necessary personally. I think it looks better without it, but if someone wanted it on, they could put it on or leave it off. That was the simplest solution I came up with. There are other solutions, all similar kind of construction, but instead of this being flat up here, if you wanted to use salvage instead of EDPM, you would have to pitch this at a minimum 1/12 pitch, which means we come up about 6 or 7 inches at the top. And the only reason to do that is to use a salvage instead of EPDM, because no one's going to see this peak from the ground if this is framed as a hip roof up here. The other way, if you want to keep this side even lower, if you want to keep that trim even more minimal, is to build this 6-inch structure, this 2x6 structure, and keep the top of it down near the level of the top of those limestone walls, and then lay flat 2x4s or 6s or whatever on top of that, and have those cantilever out, and then pick up, nail in your 2x4 or 2x3.5 frame, over frame out here, which would reduce that even further. And I think for now that's about all I can say about where I've gotten with this. I guess if you wanted to have R38 put up here to help keep some of this heat in here in the wintertime, for that water heater in particular, but the furnace too, that could be done as well. Notice that the 2x6s, you could make those 2x4s right away, except I think it's going to be pretty easy for a person to see up under here, particularly out there at the front northeast corner, and see some of that framing. And besides, I'm not sure about the water coming down and blowing in, which is why I moved to 2x6s on those overframe portions. But let me know if you want me to take a different approach, if you want me to show this as a pitched roof, the 1/12 pitch. I could do that as well. Thanks.